Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Malawi's opposition leaders triumphantly present their papers ahead of the landmark July electoral rerun. Earlier this year, judges spectacularly overturned last year's poll that returned the incumbent to power. Also, Burkina-based students are encouraged to spend more time on their phones. Many are using an online platform to access classes and study for exams whilst schools in the country remain shut. And going wild online. South African safari tours take a virtual turn as the country remains in lockdown. It's a short-term fix that could have long-term appeal. But first, supporters of Malawi's opposition took to the streets of Blantyre on Wednesday as their presidential candidate presented nomination papers for the July rerun of last year's election. That initially returned President Peter Mutharika to office, but that outcome was historically overturned in a landmark ruling. Both the President and the Electoral Commission have appealed against the annulment. Mutharika believes it's a miscarriage of justice. Opposition party leader Lazarus Chakwera has said that his MCP party has a date with destiny. Preparations for the landmark rerun are being closely watched, particularly in light of the controversy that followed Kenya's rerun elections in 2017. Professor Douglas Yates tells us more about what's at stake.
President Mutharika ran for re-election in May last year, 2019. Those elections, by all measures, were fraudulent. Pre-filled out ballots were stuffed in the boxes. Some ballots were marked with TPEX, and his name was put on them. And immediately afterwards, he declared himself the winner with 38% of the vote. And the people of Malawi came out into the capitals and they started to protest in May, in June, in July. And as a result of these protests, the Supreme Court of Malawi in February of this year reviewed 500 pages of documents and declared that the elections were fraudulent and were to be annulled. Very important in this decision was that Malawi declared that with only 38% of the vote, 2/3 of Malawians had effectively voted against Mutharika. So this time, when new presidential elections will be held, the Supreme Court declared that it must be a majority, over 50% of the vote, in order for a presidential election to be considered valid. So now the ruling party, the DPP, and the opposition have formed a coalition to try to construct a 50% majority. This is the big test. Before now, only Kenya had managed, the Supreme Court in Kenya had managed to annul a presidential election. That was back in 2017. But unfortunately, in 2017, Uhuru Kenyatta managed to run again and to win re-election, and the Supreme Court backed down. It didn't challenge that. If this time President Mutharika manages to run and win, then the test will be a failure. But if not, and if the opposition wins these elections, this would be the first time that the Supreme Court would have effectively annulled a political decision. The jury's out.
Professor Douglas Yates there. Well, a man's been sentenced to death in Nigeria's first ever virtual ruling. Because of the country's ongoing coronavirus lockdown, proceedings were held over a video conferencing platform. It was attended by several lawyers and judges, including the Attorney General. Olalekan Hamid was sentenced to death by hanging for the murder of the mother of his boss in 2018. He pled not guilty. Human Rights Watch has called the punishment cruel and inhumane and repeated calls for Nigeria to do away with capital punishment. Staying with Nigeria, flight bans have been extended by another 4 weeks to prevent the spread of coronavirus in the country. The aviation minister says that airline staff have to be trained in safety measures before flights start up again. Some government officials have expressed concern that the risks of the coronavirus pandemic in the country may be underestimated. Kenyan authorities have sealed off a suburb in Nairobi and another in Mombasa for 15 days because the neighborhoods have reportedly become coronavirus hotspots. Eastleigh, in the capital, has logged 68 cases, whilst Mombasa's Old Town has 64 confirmed COVID-19 infections. Nationally, 582 cases have been confirmed, with 26 deaths. The country's so far stopped short of ordering a full lockdown, but has brought in dusk to dawn curfews and stopped travel in and out of several cities and towns, including the capital. Well, schools and universities have been closed in Burkina Faso since March 16th. Students who had been due to take exams this year have been struggling to keep up with their studies. But many have turned to digital classes on a new platform set up to bridge the gap. Our correspondents report.
When his college closed mid-March because of COVID-19, Damien immediately began worrying about his end-of-year exams. He's due to take his baccalaureate this summer and has now switched to studying in an online classroom where he revises on his phone.
This platform is welcome because it helps us access courses we're not actually attending. We can stay at home and learn our lessons. After each class, you have exercises and evaluations that you can do. Then there are teachers who can help you to understand the classes better.
24-year-old Fabrice is a digital entrepreneur. He set up the platform last month. The goal is to give students access to thousands of free online courses.
After registering, the student lands on his online dashboard, which allows him to choose the courses according to his year. He can also search for the subject he wants to study. Then at the end, there are exercises to do. They can even take a quiz to make sure they've understood the lesson.
The courses Fabrice puts online are all validated by the teachers first. The learning tool has quickly taken off with students, and nearly 50 teachers have also come forward to support the project.
Ça va apporter un plus aux élèves du Burkina parce que la plupart aussi utilisent les outils de communication tels que les smartphones. Si ils ont à leur porter ces exercices et puis ces cours, ils peuvent, à partir de leur maison, leur domicile, travailler.
While the Burkina government has allowed schools to open again on May 11th for students preparing exams, Fabrice plans on further developing the platform and keep helping students even beyond the resolution of the COVID-19 crisis.
Well, thank goodness for the internet. Like much of the country, South African safaris are on lockdown, and in a bid to keep vital tourism resources going as the country wrestles with the impact of coronavirus restrictions, one reserve has taken the appeal of the wild online. Take a look.
Can you see them? They are right here.
A close encounter with a pride of lions that is being live streamed. Because of the lockdown, South African national parks are closed, and this reserve is filming the wild animals twice a day to provide a virtual safari. It's now attracting up to 3 million viewers a month.
We've seen a dramatic rise in our viewership of our live safaris. In total, in the first 2 weeks of April, we saw about a 5-fold in total increase in our traffic. But what's really interesting is we saw a 15-fold increase in our South African traffic in particular.
The current pandemic has led many countries to impose strict travel restrictions. This firm says we could be seeing much more virtual tourism in the future.
If we were to just have more and more tourists coming to these very, very sensitive wilderness areas, eventually we'd destroy the thing that actually brings the people. But virtual tourism offers us an opportunity to, without getting rid of that opportunity to have the physical tourism, to now scale so that the whole world can share something without destroying it.
The company Wild Earth makes money by selling premium videos to broadcasters. But for viewers worldwide who want to admire these wild animals from the safety of their living rooms, the streaming is free.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.